For this huge day in the National Football League, it was the trade heard round the sports world. The Cowboys sending superstar edge rusher Micah Parsons to the Packers in exchange for defensive tackle Kenny Clark and then Green Bay's first-round picks in each of the next two drafts. Parsons then gets a 4-year, $188 million contract from Green Bay. $136 million is total guaranteed. That makes him the highest-paid non-quarterback in NFL history. Micah Parsons released a statement. It said, "I never wanted this chapter to end, but not everything was in my control. My heart has always been here, and it still is. Through it all, I never made any demands. I never asked for anything more than fairness. I only asked that the person I trust to negotiate my contract be part of the process. This is a sad day, but not a bitter one." So that's what he said. Now we hear from Jerry Jones and Cowboys legend Michael Irvin.
This gives us a better chance to be a better team than we have been the last several years since Micah's been here. Not any negative on Micah, but we're trying to get better. We're trying to stop the run and stay in the hunt. I'm very, very excited about the prospects of what we've done for the Cowboys here. We got what we wanted. Make no mistake about it. We all know we could have signed Micah, but we decided to go with the trade.
This is a dark and sad day for Cowboys Nation and the Dallas Cowboys. But as much as I love Micah Parsons, and I hope the best for him and his family, this is a real sad day.
So Michael's taking it hard. The reaction has been a lot like that all morning long. You see, we put the squad together here in Schefter, of course, working the story all day long yesterday with Graz and so many of our outstanding reporters. And so if you're with us at the beginning of the show, Schefter, you walked us through in great detail how we got from March to yesterday. Here's what I want to do this time. How did the Cowboys arrive at the decision that they would trade him? You just heard Jerry Jones say, we could have signed Micah if we wanted to, and I think we all know that to be true. Micah Parsons wanted to be there. He wanted to sign the contract. Why did the Cowboys, to the best of our knowledge, why did they decide that this was the best course of action for them?
I think in the end, they knew that they weren't going to be re-signing Micah Parsons to a long-term deal. I want to emphasize this again. From the time that Jerry Jones felt he had a handshake agreement in March till yesterday, there were exactly zero discussions of a new contract. The topic never was broached. Jerry Jones felt like he had an agreement for $40.5 million a year with the pass rushing market exploding, TJ Watt getting 41. I don't think Jerry Jones ever intended to budge off the deal that he felt he had, which Micah Parsons never was going to take, which meant if he stayed in Dallas, he would have to play out that contract, be franchised. Micah never was going to do that, and I think Dallas recognized that over time. Jerry Jones acknowledged that even though he publicly said that he wouldn't trade Micah Parsons, he knew he was thinking of it, but he didn't want to advertise it because he felt like it would dilute his asking price. Well, I could tell you this. On Wednesday, I began getting calls from people around the league, other teams, checked in with the Cowboys. I had heard that this was coming to a head in the next couple of days. And when you called around, the Dallas Cowboys said, we just want this resolved one way or another. Well, what does that mean, one way or another? We know that he's not signing an extension, so clearly a trade must be at hand. They were talking to multiple suitors. The Green Bay Packers were one of them. And when the Cowboys woke up yesterday morning, I don't know that even they knew that the trade would come down later in the day. There still was a lot that had to be done. The Packers knew they were talking to the Cowboys, but they didn't know it was going to get done because Kenny Clark, the player included in the deal, practiced yesterday with the Green Bay Packers. If they knew they were making that deal, Kenny Clark is not on the practice field risking injury, and as soon as he gets called off the practice field, he finds out. Later in the afternoon, I get a call after we put out the story that the Cowboys were listening to offers, and I was told this trade will be done by the end of the night. And in fact, it was in the afternoon after Micah Parsons agreed to a deal with the Dallas Cowboys, 4 years, $188 million, which, oh, by the way, just happens to be $48 more million than Jerry Jones paid for the Dallas Cowboys when he had that handshake agreement that he referred to when he was trying to get Micah Parsons under contract.
And so, Dan Graziano, just to sort of fill in another blank here, I think there was a perception out there in the world, and we may have fed it, and I don't know that it's wrong, I guess I'm asking you, that this happened at least in large part because Jerry Jones felt offended or hurt or as though he had been wronged in some way. That would be a terrible reason to trade away your best player, right? It sounds like Schefter is saying, and if you may have heard Kirk Herbstreit when he was on this a little while ago, saying there may have been other things at play here too, that maybe, and I know you're not there every day, but that maybe Micah Parsons wasn't always the most popular player in that building.
There's obviously there's a lot that comes with Micah, right? Like he's obviously, you know, he has his podcast, he weighs in on every single topic, right? Like that you could see where like maybe a team might say, well, he could be a lot to deal with. The fact is he's so good that it doesn't matter.
That's right.
You should be able to do. Jerry Jones has an expression where he says, "Don't let your money get mad," and it feels like he did. And it feels like, because this relationship could have been fixed at some point in the last 6 months. Like a business relationship can be mended, especially when there's mutual benefit to both sides. But he never took a step toward doing that.
Can I ask you and Schefter a quick question, though? In Jerry Jones's comments that we listened to, he said, this is something we've been thinking about since the spring.
Right.
In reference to trading Micah Parsons.
But
is that accurate? Like, he's the one who said it.
I mean, look, we've been talking about it since the spring, right? So, like, it's certainly not like something that they were ignorant of in terms of the possibility, but it wasn't the plan, like, in the spring. Like, certainly it must have come up in the building. Well, what if we don't sign him? But that they were going to sign him. Like, ultimately, that was the decision, and that's why Jerry Jones had that conversation with Micah back in the spring, because the intent was to keep him long term.
Greedy, there's another option here that we really haven't talked about, which is when you think about the Cincinnati Bengals, they just put a Band-Aid on Trey Hendrickson to cap off signing Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. When you're the leader of a franchise, your responsibility is also to think 6 months ahead of time. What they could have said is, hey, it's not going to work here long term, and we're going to get a massive haul in the March of 2026. We're going to sit down with Micah and David Mulligan, his agent, and we're going to put a Band-Aid on this. We're going to maybe split the difference between 24 and 40. We'll give you an $8 million raise, $10 million raise on a one-year deal. And then when we get to March, we're going to hold the greatest auction in the history of the NFL and get a Herschel Walker type return. Because, again, Kenny Clark is 30. He is a B. He is a good football player. But for a team that won 11 games last year, 2 of those starts with Malik Willis, those are going to be low first-round picks. And it's just inconceivable that from a strategic standpoint, they made a decision in late August to do it.
Well, my thing is, you use the word strategic. I don't see where the strategy was in all of this, because it seems like the Dallas Cowboys are operating in 2 different timelines. Literally in a matter of 2 years, you've re-signed your quarterback to a historic deal. You re-signed your star wide receiver in CeeDee Lamb, and then you turn right around and you gave away, quote unquote, gave away your best player on the team. So in one breath, you're going all in because you're signing your best players, but then you trade away your best player. It like makes absolutely no sense. Where is the strategy in that? He talked about, okay, we've been thinking about trading him in March. That's the time to do it.
But that's
to get the haul. And my whole point is, there is no strategy here.
Football-wise.
There's no strategy.
Football-wise, there's nobody in football that will make sense and justify this as a football move. To your point, Mike T., if he was traded in March, the compensation would have been drastically different. And I understand the thought of, we're taking this player, we're going to trade him away, and we're going to use all those different assets that we get to kind of fill in the roster of our football team. But you didn't do that.
Right.
And that's why there has to be, remember a couple weeks ago, this is personal. There has to be so much more attached to this situation from the Cowboys' perspective, other than we think we're going to become a better football team.
But Dan, that's why, like, to me, like, if you're Jerry Jones, you're like, all right, we're going to do what's best for the Cowboys. In March of 26, we're going to have an auction. We're going to put a Band-Aid on it. Like, but they're selling at the worst possible time they could have. It should have either been March of this year or March of next year. And, again, that's when you're...
It got that personal? It got that personal.
That's what it seems to be. Yes. I mean,
it's not on the team anymore.
What Schefter just basically said was they realized they weren't going to be able to solve this problem any other way, because Jerry Jones wasn't going to call the agent and get the deal done. But he felt he had been wrong. We all think he's wrong, but he doesn't. Let me get Schefter back in here. Go ahead, Schefter.
Well, about a week ago, I think Micah Parsons and his camp reached out to see if Dallas was interested in having any conversations, and they weren't. And I don't think Micah was willing essentially to play this season on a reworked compromise kind of deal when he knows that if he gets traded, he can get $47 million a year. People thought Micah Parsons didn't have any leverage. Well, he did have leverage. He had his services. He had his talents. He had other teams being interested. And he parlayed that into a deal that made him the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history. And I go back to the timing of it. I don't think it's coincidental that the Dallas Cowboys will have their first practice really of the regular season today, getting ready for Thursday night's game in Philadelphia against the Eagles. The feeling is that they wanted to have this wrapped up before they stepped onto the practice field to begin preparations for next week's game against the Eagles. Now, I will say this also. They're playing in the NFC East. There are people around that division and conference who joked that they would be willing to throw in picks to make the deal to get Micah Parsons out of the division. That's how badly these other people were rooting for Micah Parsons to leave the division. Everybody wanted him gone. And the confusion amongst other NFL executives was, why did the Dallas Cowboys not make the trade in March? That's one thing. But why did they trade him in the conference to a team that's eliminated them from the postseason each of the last 3 times that they've made it that far? They didn't trade him to these other teams. I know you guys have brought up Baltimore and Buffalo. Those teams did not have the money to make this trade. They've spent it on other players. You could say it. You could say that would be great. They couldn't make it happen. There were only a select, finite group of teams that realistically, financially, could make a trade like this. It's even difficult for Green Bay to do it, but the Packers felt like it was worth stretching themselves to get a deal done for the only other player in NFL history to have at least 12 sacks in his first 4 seasons, joining a player by the name of Reggie White that Green Bay knows a thing or two about.
You don't become a shrewd businessman like Jerry Jones, where the Dallas Cowboys are worth $13.2 billion, and make an emotional decision to trade a guy in conference to the Green Bay Packers. That, to me, is why this makes absolutely no sense at all.
Yep, he got backed into a corner, because that's the point you're making, Mike T. Buffalo and Baltimore couldn't make that deal today.
Correct.
But they could have, maybe they could have made it in March, and maybe they could have made it next March.
Exactly. And to me, like, to D Wood's point, if you're so smart and strategic about buying the Cowboys when you did and turning it into what they have, you say, all right, we're in this situation. We screwed up, whatever it is. We're playing the Eagles in 6 days. Let's put a Band-Aid on it and revisit it.
We're back on a Football Friday with the enormous news that the Green Bay Packers have acquired Micah Parsons. This harkens back in the 1993 offseason. Reggie White signed in Green Bay. After being a dominant player in Philadelphia, the Packers would go on to win the Super Bowl in 1996. In 2006, Green Bay signing defensive back Charles Woodson. In 2009, he would be the Defensive Player of the Year, and the Packers would win the Lombardi Trophy. Now, yesterday, they trade for 2-time first-team All-Pro Micah Parsons and sign him to the richest contract any non-quarterback has ever had in NFL history. We'll see if that leads them to another Super Bowl championship. And Rob Demovsky has been covering the Packers for us forever. Rob, take us through this from the Packers side of this. How did this all come together?
Greeny, this all began one day when Packers general manager Brian Gutekunst walked into Matt LaFleur's office and asked his head coach, would you want Micah Parsons? Matt LaFleur said, well, of course. But even as they went through the process, I was told that the Packers thought that there was no way or very little chance that Jerry Jones would actually part ways with a star player in the prime of his career like Micah Parsons. And this also wasn't just a trade deal, as you know. It was a trade and a contract, so it took quite a while. But it does go along with what appears to be, Greeny, a more aggressive approach to this team. I want to take you back to the draft. In April, when they drafted Matthew Golden, the receiver, they hadn't drafted a receiver in the first round in 21 years. Even before that, January 16th, 4 days after the Packers lost to the Philadelphia Eagles in the playoff game, Brian Gutekunst stood in front of us and said, it's time we start competing for championships. There's also one other factor here, and it's the Ed Policy factor. He's the new Packers president, took over this year, and he talked to us for the first time, and we asked him about the contracts of both Matt LaFleur and Brian Gutekunst. Those contracts run through 2026, so this season and next season. He told us that he's not going to extend their contracts right away, but he also doesn't believe in lame duck years, which was left unsaid was the fact that this is a critical year for both of those guys. But it's also possible that there's another Ed policy factor and that he's encouraging them to be more aggressive in the way they approach this season.
And so clearly they have done that. You can imagine Aaron Rodgers is sitting there looking at this saying, where was all of this when I was the MVP of the league? Very quickly, Rob, because I follow you on the Twitter X, and you were asking Packers players and their general manager about Micah Parsons. I want to say it was Tuesday of several days ago this week. So you had some inkling, obviously, that something here was brewing.
Yeah, it was right after the final cuts, and it just seemed like this was picking up steam as a possibility. And one of the players I asked was Xavier McKinney, the all-pro safety, who happens to have the same agent as Micah Parsons. And he looked at me and he goes, I'm not going there, but Micah's a great player and a great dude. And he smiled at me, which told me that he might know something was in the works as well.
Okay, yeah, that agent is David Mulligetta. Jerry Jones has never met him. Outstanding work, Rob Demovsky. Thank you very much. Phenomenal, and obviously we'll be checking with you regularly. So there's been so much conversation here, Dan, about the Cowboys and being willing to part with him and all the rest of that. That's the soap opera. Now let's get to on the field. You have Jordan Love. You have this receiving core. They drafted the rookie in the first round.
They should be in the NFC Championship game.
Well, could you expand on that thought?
This team should go to the NFC Championship game at worst. They should win the division. They should be the division favorites, and they're the team that now is most equipped to beat the Philadelphia Eagles. They have the best edge rush duo in the NFC now. When you take Micah Parsons, who is one of the 6 or 7 game wreckers, and you pair him with a player like Rashawn Gary, who is a fantastic edge rusher, that's a problem for offenses. And then you add in Edgerrin Cooper, who's their young linebacker, who's a superstar. The flaw of this team in Green Bay were their corners. Yeah. The best way to help corners is get to the quarterback quicker. And so we're talking about a defense now that is loaded, that was getting under Jeff Hafley, their defense coordinator, better as the season went on, and an offense that has got a ton of weapons. And I would say this, Matt LaFleur. If I was Matt LaFleur, I would go into Jordan Love today and be like, we are going to be the most aggressive offense in the NFL. Yeah. Because if you give the ball away, we'll get it back. You are so talented that we are just going to be ultra aggressive. And now this team is absolutely loaded with explosiveness. They could be explosive on offense, and they can be explosive on defense. That's the team that Philadelphia is going to have to beat to get back to the Super Bowl.
I want to ask you a similar question to one I've been asking you for a while now, D. Wood, but it has 4 more days. So they open with what could be a monster game. Packers open their season at home against the Lions, 425 spot. Jim Nantz and Tony Romo are licking their chops, obviously, about that game. So that's a week from Sunday. Today's Friday. The Tree gets there today. Can he play in that game?
I don't think he can play a full game. I don't think he can play a full game, but I think he can play meaningful snaps. Listen, Greeny, imagine you're Micah Parsons. You get traded to the Green Bay Packers. I'm telling you right now, like a player in a new environment, you're not gonna want to sit out.
I get it.
I've said it on the show. There's no way that Micah Parsons could play. But there's a difference between Thursday and Sunday.
Right. Yeah.
And he's going to want to run out in Lambeau Field against the Detroit Lions. He's going to play. He's not going to play the full game, but he's going to have an impact. He's going to have an impact in this game.
So you think like his back will feel better all of
Listen, there's nothing like a new contract to make things go away.
That Green Bay cold to make it feel great.
Oh yeah.
Look, I just think walking into the locker room today, the vibes and the almost like the here we go. As a player, when you feel and sense the organization understands how good you are and is now like, we're all in,
you appreciate it.
Everybody as a player is going to be like, here we go. Like, it's go time now.
That's the thing, right? So this is a team that was good last year. Jordan Love gets hurt in the opener. They still managed to win the next 2 games with Malik Willis, who had gotten there like a week earlier.
Yeah.
Like, they're extremely well coached. They're deep. They're young. They're the youngest roster in the league, and they got younger with this trade. They traded a 30-year-old away and got a 26-year-old. So I don't know. I said this yesterday. Like, the reason I don't like this deal is because I was ready to pick the Packers to go to the Super Bowl, and now I feel like everybody will.
Yeah.
And I thought I was going to out on a limb
like
there.
Hope to expectation now.
Yeah,
there
100%.
is the side where.
But there's always expectation in Green Bay. Like the tradition there demands it, right?
Totally.
And so
totally.
They've built something, and they feel like with Jordan Love at quarterback, with Matt LaFleur at coach, that they have young stars in key positions and can be very good for a very long time.
Juice.
Yeah.
You plug in Michael Parsons, now you have juice in the locker room. Just like you would talk about guys in the locker room like, all right, it's time. Now it's time to go.
You know, they've majored in being very good for a long time.
Yeah.
That's been my criticism. Is they didn't make the move that puts you over the top. They've been
never
really
swung
good
like this
for a
in their
long time. And Demovsky was just saying it. Like, this is not
Reggie
the way
White.
the Packers have done business. But Reggie White is 30-something years ago.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's been a long time.
So they've been consistently good. Now they have a chance to be great. Speaking of which, we are all very excited about this, the all-new ESPN app, the best way to watch sports, all of ESPN, all in one place, all the time. Live games, live stats, track your fantasy teams, personalize the app with your favorite leagues and teams and players.